A man walks into a camping store in Denver, Colorado, in the spring of 2024. He walks out 40 minutes later with a 2-burner propane camp stove, a windscreen, a titanium cookset, a collapsible kettle, a fuel canister adapter, 2 spare propane bottles, a fire starter kit, a silicone spatula rated to 600 degrees, and a stuff sack to hold all of it. Total weight, 14 pounds. Total cost, $387. He drives 4 hours into the Rockies, sets up at a campsite at 9,000 feet, and cooks a freeze-dried bag of pasta that tastes like cardboard and salt. In 1835, 200 miles north of that same campsite, a mountain man named Thomas Fitzpatrick cooked a full elk stew in a hole in the ground lined with a buffalo hide, using nothing but fire-heated rocks dropped into water. No metal, no fuel canister, no propane, no store. The stew took 45 minutes. It fed 6 men. And the only thing he carried was a skinning knife. That is not nostalgia, friend. That is engineering that the outdoor gear industry spent 200 years replacing with plastic, propane, and a receipt. If you clicked on this video, you already know that modern camp stoves work. What you probably do not know is how unnecessary most of them are. What you probably do not know is that the mountain men who crossed this continent on foot and horseback, who fed themselves in every season, on every terrain, from the Missouri to the Pacific, did it with techniques so simple that a camping store executive would call them strange, and a physicist would call them genius. Here is the twist. Not one of these 25 tricks requires a single manufactured product. Not a stove, not a pot, not a pan, not a fuel canister, not a lighter. Every one of them uses materials you can find within 100 yards of any campsite in North America. And every one of them still works today exactly the way it worked 200 years ago. The mountain man did not have less than you. He knew more than you. That is the gap the outdoor industry fills with gear, and today we fill it with knowing. Now, number 7 on this list, the United States Army used as standard field cooking protocol from the Civil War through the Second World War. Number 3. Most modern campers would not believe works until they see it done. And number 1. Friend, number 1 is the one that makes every camp stove ever built look like an expensive toy, and I am not touching it until we are most of the way down. I am Silas Mercer, 7th generation on this ridge. The Mercers have held this stretch of Appalachian mountain since the 1790s, and I have not left it. My grandfather Eli raised me after my daddy died in the timber, and before he went, he made me copy every last thing he knew into a leather journal. This is me keeping that promise. Before we get into the fire, pull the trigger on subscribe. Not for me. Because the buried skills we drag back into daylight around here, you are going to want the next one. We are going all 25, top to bottom. The ones the gear companies replaced. The ones that still work. The ones your great-grandfather did not need a receipt to learn. Number 25. The grease stone. Your great-grandfather found a flat, smooth river stone, set it at the edge of his fire until it was screaming hot, pulled it out with a forked stick, rubbed it with a piece of animal fat, and fried his morning meat on it. No pan, no coating, no seasoning schedule. The stone held heat longer than cast iron, distributed it more evenly, and cleaned itself in the fire. A modern cast iron skillet runs $25 to $45. His grease stone was free, weighed nothing on the trail, and he picked up a new one at every camp. Number 24. Ash-roasted potatoes. Dig a shallow hole in the ash bed beside the fire. Drop in whole potatoes, unpeeled. Cover with an inch of hot ash and a layer of coals. Wait 45 minutes. Pull them out with a stick. Brush off the ash. The skin peels back to a white, fluffy interior, cooked perfectly even. No pot, no water, no foil, no pan, The ash insulates evenly from every direction. Your camp stove cannot do that. It heats from one direction and burns the bottom while the top stays raw. Number 23. Green stick skewers. Not every wood is safe to cook on. Your great-grandfather knew which to cut and which to leave alone. Maple, oak, hickory, apple, cherry. These are clean-burning hardwoods that do not leach resin or bitter oils into the food. He cut green sticks, thumb thickness, peeled the bark, sharpened the end, and skewered meat, fish, and vegetables directly over the coals. Pine, spruce, and cedar leave a turpentine taste that ruins the food. The mountain man, who grabbed the wrong stick, learned the lesson once. A set of modern stainless steel grilling skewers runs $15. His hardwood stick was free, disposable, and did not need washing. Number 22. The angled reflector fire. Your great-grandfather built his cooking fire against a large rock or a stacked green log wall, angled to reflect heat forward and downward. The reflected heat created a zone in front of the fire that was hotter than the fire itself. He cooked in that zone. The food received heat from two directions, direct and reflected. Faster cooking. More even heat, less fuel burned. A modern camp stove gives you heat from one direction only. His reflector gave him two, and the reflector cost him 3 green logs or 1 good boulder. Number 21. Egg in ashes. Your great-grandfather poked a small hole in the top of a raw egg with a thorn or the tip of his knife. He nestled the egg upright in warm ash at the edge of the fire. In 12 to 15 minutes the egg was hard-cooked, shell intact, no water, no pot, no timer. The small hole let steam escape, so the egg did not explode. The ash held gentle, even heat that cooked the egg from every angle. Try cooking an egg on a camp stove without a pot of water. You cannot. He did it with a pinhole and a pile of ash. Number 20. The coal bed griddle. Instead of cooking over open flame, your great-grandfather let his fire burn down to a thick bed of coals, raked them flat, and laid food directly on the coals. Thin sliced meat, flatbread dough, filleted fish on a bed of green leaves. The coal bed is a radiant heat surface that stays at a steady 400 to 500 degrees for over an hour. No grate needed, no stovetop. The food picks up a light char and a smoke flavor that no propane burner can produce. Brush off the ash and eat. The mountain men called it coal broiling, and they preferred it to any other method for quick trail meals. Number 19. Stick bread. Your great-grandfather mixed flour, a pinch of salt, and water into a stiff dough. He rolled it into a rope the thickness of his thumb and spiraled it around a green hardwood stick, leaving gaps between the coils. He held the stick over the fire, rotating slowly, for 10 to 15 minutes. The bread baked golden and crusty around the stick. He slid it off and ate it hot. The voyageurs called it bannock on a stick. The Appalachian settlers called it twist bread. The technique is the same. Fresh bread in the backcountry with no oven, no pan, and no Dutch oven to carry. A $40 backpacking stove and a $15 titanium pot cannot bake bread. A green stick and a fistful of flour can. Number 18. The buried bean pot. Your great-grandfather dug a hole the size of a bucket, lined the bottom with flat hot stones from the fire, set his cast-iron pot or clay crock full of soaked beans, salted meat, and water on top of the stones, and buried the whole thing with hot coals, ash, and a layer of dirt. He walked away. He checked trap lines. He came back 8 hours later, dug it up, and had a pot of beans cooked low and slow without tending the fire a single time. This is the original slow cooker. The $80 electric crockpot in your kitchen is a plastic copy of a hole in the ground that cost nothing and ran on rocks. Number 17. Plank cooking fish. Your great-grandfather filleted a fish, pinned it skin side down to a split plank of green cedar, oak, or alder using small wooden pegs or thorns, and propped the plank upright beside the fire at a 70-degree angle. The radiant heat cooked the fish slowly, while the wood plank smoked and steamed underneath. The fish stayed moist, picked up the wood flavor, and never touched a grate. Cedar plank cooking is now a $30 accessory sold at gourmet grilling stores. Your great-grandfather made it with a hatchet split and 5 thorns. Number 16. Heated rock plate warmers. Your great-grandfather pulled flat stones from the edge of the fire and set them under his tin plate or directly on the ground where he would sit to eat. The stone held heat for 30 minutes or more. His food stayed warm through the entire meal. No warming drawer, no microwave, no insulated plate cover, a hot rock and a flat surface. Number 15. Hide boiling with hot rocks. Before metal pots were common in the Mountain West, your great-grandfather dug a shallow pit, lined it with a fresh animal hide, pegged flat with the skin side up, filled it with water, and dropped in stones heated to white hot in the fire. The stones transferred their heat to the water. The water boiled. The hide did not burn because the water kept its temperature below the point of damage. He boiled stew, rendered fat, and cooked mash in a container that no modern camper would believe could hold boiling water. A titanium camp pot runs $40 to $90. His hide pit cost him the skin of the animal he was already butchering. Pattern break, friend. Everything so far most experienced outdoors folk might know a few of, but we are about to cross into the ones that would make a modern camping store manager lose sleep. The ones where the mountain man's ingenuity goes beyond strange and into something that looks like witchcraft until you understand the physics. Number 14. Cooking in green leaves. Your great-grandfather wrapped fish, ground meat, or root vegetables in large fresh leaves, wild grape, burdock, plantain, or corn husks, tied the bundle with bark strips, and buried it in hot coals. The green leaves steamed inside without burning, creating a sealed moist heat environment that cooked the food perfectly in 20 to 40 minutes. The leaf held the moisture in, the coals held the heat steady. No foil, no plastic wrap, no oven bag. The leaf was the bag, and it was compostable a century before the word existed. Number 13. The trench fire for wind cooking. When the wind was too strong for an open fire, your great-grandfather dug a narrow trench a foot deep and 2 feet long, oriented with the opening facing into the wind. He built his fire in the trench. The walls blocked the cross-draft that would scatter an open fire. The wind channeled into the opening and fed oxygen to the coals like a bellows. He laid green sticks across the top as a grate and cooked in a wind that would blow out any camp stove on the market. A modern windscreen accessory runs $20 to $35. His trench cost him 5 minutes with a stick and his boot heel. Number 12. Spit roasting on a self-turning greenwood rig. Your great-grandfather cut a green sapling, carved the ends into points, set it between 2 forked sticks driven into the ground on either side of the fire, and twisted the spit until the green wood held tension. When he released it, the wood slowly unwound, rotating the meat over the fire hands-free. Primitive rotisserie. He adjusted the height by setting the forks in deeper or shallower holes. A battery-powered rotisserie attachment for a camp grill runs $30 to $60. His greenwood rig cost him a sapling and 2 forks. Number 11. Smoking with damp wood chips on the coal bed. Your great-grandfather pulled green or soaked wood chips from hickory, apple, or mesquite and laid them directly on the coal bed under the meat. The damp chips smoldered without flaming, producing thick smoke that flavored the meat in minutes. He controlled the intensity by adding or removing chips. A modern stovetop smoker box runs $25 to $40. His handful of wet wood chips cost him a 30-second walk to the nearest hardwood. Number 10. The tilted stone oven. Your great-grandfather found a large flat stone, propped it at a 45-degree angle facing the fire with smaller stones as supports, and used it as a baking surface. The fire heated the stone. The stone radiated heat from below, and the fire radiated heat from the front. Bread dough, flat cakes, and thin meat pressed against the stone baked from both directions simultaneously. One stone, one fire. A baking oven and a griddle at the same time. A portable camp oven runs $80 to $150. His tilted stone ran free. Number 9. Cooking inside a hollowed gourd or squash. Your great-grandfather cut the top off a thick-walled squash or pumpkin, scooped out the seeds, filled the cavity with chunks of meat, root vegetables, wild onion, and water, set the lid back on, and buried the whole thing in hot coals. The shell of the squash is the pot. The moisture inside prevents it from burning through. In 90 minutes, the squash itself was soft enough to eat, and the stew inside was cooked through. He ate the pot. No dish to wash. No pot to carry. No cleanup. A modern one-pot camp meal kit runs $20 to $30 per serving. His squash cost him a walk to the garden, and everything was edible, including the container. Number 8. Rendering fat in a bark trough. Your great-grandfather stripped a large piece of birch bark, folded and pinned the corners with wooden pegs to form a shallow trough, filled it with chopped animal fat, and set heated rocks into the fat. The fat melted. The bark did not burn because the liquid kept the temperature below the bark's ignition point. He poured off clear rendered tallow and used it for cooking, preservation, and waterproofing. No metal pot needed. The bark was the vessel. The rocks were the burner. Number 7. The Dakota Fire Hole. Your great-grandfather dug 2 holes a foot apart, each about a foot deep, and connected them with a tunnel at the bottom. He built his fire in one hole. The other hole served as an air intake. The tunnel created a natural draft that pulled air into the fire from below, burning hotter with less fuel and producing almost no visible smoke. He set his pot, or his flat stone, over the fire hole and cooked with a near-invisible, wind-resistant, fuel-efficient fire. The United States Army used the Dakota Fire Hole as standard field cooking protocol from the Civil War through the Second World War. It is documented in military field manuals from 3 separate centuries. A modern backpacking stove with a wind guard and a fuel-efficient burner runs $60 to $150. The Dakota hole does the same job with 2 holes and a tunnel, and it has been doing it since before the United States existed. Number 6. The Overnight Coal Roast. Your great-grandfather wrapped a whole joint of meat, a shoulder, a haunch, a rack of ribs, in wet burlap or a thick layer of wet clay, buried it in a deep pit of hot coals, covered the pit with dirt, and went to sleep. The insulated mass cooked at a low, steady temperature all night. He dug it up at dawn. The clay cracked open. The meat inside was falling off the bone, smoked, tender, and cooked through. The $300 electric smoker on your patio is a stainless steel copy of a hole in the ground and a handful of wet clay. Number 5. The 2-rock bread oven. Your great-grandfather found 2 large flat stones. He heated one in the fire until it was screaming hot. He pulled it out, laid dough on the surface, and covered it with the second cold stone. The hot bottom stone baked from below. The cold top stone trapped steam and reflected heat downward as it warmed. In 20 minutes, the bread was done, with a crust on both sides. No Dutch oven, no lid, 2 rocks and a fire. Number 4. The Forked Stick Tripod Crane. Your great-grandfather lashed 3 green poles at the top with bark cord and spread the legs to form a tripod over the fire. He hung his pot from the junction on a hook carved from a Y-shaped branch and adjusted the height by changing the spread of the legs, Wider legs, pot drops lower, more heat. Narrower legs, pot rises higher, less heat. Adjustable temperature control without a knob. The modern camp tripod grill with a chain and hook runs $40 to $70. His 3 green sticks and a bark cord cost him 10 minutes. Number 3. Cooking in a birch bark pot. Your great-grandfather folded birch bark into a watertight container, pinned the seams with wooden pegs, filled it with water and food, and dropped in fire-heated stones until the water boiled. The bark did not burn because the water inside kept the temperature at 212 degrees, which is below the ignition point of birch bark. He boiled soup, stew, and tea in a container made of tree bark. Most modern campers would not believe this works until they see it done. It works. It has worked for thousands of years. The birch bark pot is documented in the journals of French fur traders, in the ethnographic records of dozens of indigenous nations, and in the survival manuals of 2 armies. Number 2. The animal stomach stew pot. Your great-grandfather cleaned the stomach of a deer, elk, or buffalo, hung it from a tripod frame over a low fire, and filled it with water, meat, and root vegetables. The stomach wall is thick enough to hold liquid without leaking, and heat-resistant enough to hang near a fire without burning through, especially when filled with liquid that absorbs the heat. He cooked a full stew in the organ of the animal he had just butchered. No pot, no pan, no metal of any kind. The animal provided the meat and the cookware. A modern camp cookset runs $50 to $120. His cost him nothing beyond the animal he was already eating. And now we are at number 1, friend. The one I have been holding since the beginning, the one that makes every camp stove, every cookset, every fuel canister, every piece of titanium and stainless and aluminum ever stamped in a factory look like an expensive solution to a problem that never existed. Number 1. The rock boil. The oldest cooking technique on this continent, and the one the outdoor gear industry has spent 200 years hoping you never rediscover. Your great-grandfather dug a shallow depression in the ground. He lined it with a fresh animal hide, a large piece of bark, or simply packed the clay-rich earth tight enough to hold water. He filled it with water. He built a fire nearby and heated stones in it until they glowed. Then, using forked sticks, he lifted the stones from the fire and dropped them into the water. The water hissed, it steamed, and within minutes it boiled. He added meat, roots, wild greens. He kept rotating fresh hot stones in and spent stones out. In 30 minutes, he had a boiling stew cooked in a hole in the ground, with no metal, no fuel, no stove, and no equipment he could not find within 50 steps of where he was standing. The rock boil is not a trick. It is the foundation. Every other cooking method on this list is a variation of the same principle. Heat is heat. Transfer is transfer. The mountain man did not need a vessel that could withstand fire. He needed a vessel that could hold water, and he put the fire inside the water instead of the water on top of the fire. That inversion is the whole skill. That inversion is what makes the $400 camp stove setup in the Denver store look like a complicated answer to a simple question. Archaeologists have found rock boiling pits dating back 10,000 years on this continent. The technique is documented in the ethnographic record of nearly every indigenous culture in North America. The mountain men learned it from the people who were here first, and they used it from the Missouri to the Pacific for 100 years before the tin pot became common trade goods. The rock boil fed armies. It fed nations. And it asks nothing of you except a hole, some water, and a fire. That is the trick the outdoor gear industry hopes you never learn. Not because it is dangerous, not because it is outdated, because it proves that everything they sell you is optional, every last piece. And a man who knows the rock boil cannot be sold a camp stove. He does not need one. He never did. Now, I am not telling you to throw away your camp stove, friend. I am not telling you the gear does not work. It works. I am telling you to know the skill behind the gear, because the gear fails. The gear runs out of fuel. The gear gets left behind, breaks, weighs you down, and costs you money every season. The skill does none of those things. The skill is free. The skill is permanent. And the skill was here 10,000 years before the first factory opened its doors. Do not try to do all 25 this weekend. Pick one, just one. This Saturday, build a fire, let it burn down to coals, and ash roast a potato. That is number 24. That is 10 minutes and one potato. Or find a flat stone, heat it in the fire, rub it with fat, and fry an egg on it. That is number 25. That is 5 minutes and breakfast. One trick, one fire, one weekend. And by this time next year, you will not need a camping store. You will need a match and the ground under your feet. Tell me down below, did your grandparents cook over an open fire? Did they use a flat stone, a green stick, or a method I have never heard of? Different regions cook different ways, and the one that gets the most comments is the one I go deep on in the next video. Your great-great-grandfather crossed a mountain range with a knife and a fire, and fed himself better than most men do with a truckload of gear. Now you know how he did it. Do not let it die on your watch. Next time on this channel, the 1-cent flour and ash trick that baked bread for frontier families with no oven, no yeast and no store, and the year the bread industry made sure your grandmother forgot it existed. Tap subscribe if you have not. There are 300 more of these buried in Eli's journal, and I mean to pull every last one of them back into daylight before I am done. Keep the old ways. They kept us.